A construction worker saved a man's life. Then a billionaire showed up and changed everything. The first thing Daniel Reyes heard was the scream of twisting steel. It cut through the morning noise of downtown Chicago, a violent, metallic shriek that rose above jackhammers, truck engines, shouted instructions, and the relentless pounding of construction. For half a second, everyone on the 32nd floor froze. Then the scaffolding gave way. Daniel looked up just in time to see a section of the temporary platform tear loose from the building above. Steel pipes, wooden boards, cables, and tools spilled through the air. Workers shouted and scattered. A wrench struck the concrete near Daniel's boot and bounced over the edge. A plank shattered against the support column. And then Daniel saw the man falling. He was not wearing a hard hat. He was not wearing a safety vest. He wore a dark blue suit, the kind that looked too expensive to belong anywhere near dust and wet concrete. He had been standing on a visitor platform with two project managers when the collapse began. One of them had grabbed a railing. The man in the blue suit had missed it. Daniel did not think. He ran. The falling man struck the lower edge of the platform, flipped sideways, and landed hard on a stack of insulation 20 feet below. The materials softened the impact, but the momentum carried him toward the open side of the building. Beyond that edge was nothing but empty air. Daniel threw himself across the concrete. His fingers closed around the man's wrist just as the man's body slid over the edge. The sudden weight yanked Daniel forward so violently that his shoulder felt as if it had been pulled from its socket. His chest slammed against the rough concrete. Dust filled his mouth. His legs kicked behind him, searching for resistance. Below them, traffic moved through the streets like tiny streams of metal. The man looked up at Daniel with wide, terrified eyes. "Don't let go," he gasped. Daniel tightened his grip. "I wasn't planning to." The man's other hand clawed at the edge, but blood made his fingers slip. Daniel could feel himself sliding. The concrete scraped through his shirt and tore skin. From his ribs. "Help!" Daniel shouted. "Somebody get over here." For a moment that seemed endless, no one came. Workers were trapped behind fallen materials. Dust clouded the floor. A warning alarm began ringing through the building, loud and useless. The man hanging below Daniel was in his late 20s, maybe 30. Blood ran down the side of his face. His suit jacket had torn at the shoulder. His breathing came in short, frightened bursts. "What's your name?" Daniel asked. The question surprised the man. "What? Your name? Tell me your name." "Ethan." "Okay, Ethan. Look at me." Ethan's eyes moved from the street far below to Daniel's face. "You're going to keep looking at me," Daniel said. "You're going to breathe. You're not going to look down again. I can't hold on." "You don't have to. I've got you." Daniel was not sure that was true. His right arm had begun to shake. Pain burned through his shoulder and down his back. His body slid another inch toward the edge. Then a pair of gloved hands grabbed Daniel's belt. "I got you," shouted Marcus Lee, another worker on Daniel's crew. Two more workers appeared through the dust. One caught Daniel around the waist. Another lowered himself and reached for Ethan's jacket. "On three," Marcus shouted. "1, 2, 3. They pulled. Ethan's chest struck the edge. He cried out in pain. Daniel changed his grip from Ethan's wrist to the back of his shirt. "Again," Marcus yelled. Together, they dragged Ethan over the edge and onto the floor. For several seconds, no one spoke. Ethan lay on his back, staring at the unfinished ceiling. Daniel rolled onto his side, clutching his shoulder. Around them, pieces of the broken scaffold continued to settle with small clanks and groans. A safety supervisor ran toward them. "Is anyone else down?" "Two workers are injured near the north side," Marcus said. "Call emergency services." "Now." "They're already on the way." Daniel forced himself upright and crawled to Ethan. Blood covered Ethan's temple, and his left leg bent at an unnatural angle. His face had become pale. "Stay still," Daniel said. Ethan blinked slowly. "You saved me. Save your breath." "I would have fallen. But you didn't." Ethan tried to smile, but pain tightened his face. "My phone," he whispered. "I need my phone." "It can wait." "No. My sister." His eyes rolled back. "Ethan." Daniel touched the side of his neck and felt a pulse, fast but present. The paramedics arrived within minutes, though to Daniel it felt much longer. They placed a brace around Ethan's neck, stabilized his leg, and lifted him onto a stretcher. One of them examined Daniel's shoulder and the deep scrapes across his chest. "You need to come with us," she said. "I'm fine." You may have a dislocation or fracture. I said I'm fine. The paramedic studied him. You just held a grown man over the side of a 30-story building. And now he's not hanging there anymore. You're still coming to the hospital. Daniel looked toward his foreman. The older man nodded. Go, he said. We're shutting the site down anyway. Daniel climbed into the ambulance and sat near the rear doors while the paramedics worked on Ethan. The siren began to wail. Through the small windows, Daniel watched the construction site disappear behind them. He should have felt proud. He should have felt relieved. Instead, one thought pressed against his mind. If his shoulder was badly injured, he might not be able to work. If he could not work, he could not pay the rent. If he could not pay the rent, he and his daughter had nowhere to go. Daniel flexed his fingers and ignored the pain. Across from him, Ethan opened his eyes. Where am I? In an ambulance, a paramedic said. You've had a serious fall. Ethan looked around until he found Daniel. You came with me. Apparently, I didn't have a choice. Ethan swallowed. Thank you. Daniel looked away. Anybody would have done it. No, Ethan said quietly. They wouldn't. Daniel did not answer. At the hospital, Ethan was rushed through a set of double doors while Daniel was taken to the emergency department. A nurse cut away part of his shirt to clean the scrapes on his chest. Another ordered x-rays. No fracture, the doctor eventually said. Severe strain, likely partial ligament damage. You'll need to rest it, use ice, and avoid heavy lifting for at least 2 weeks. Daniel stared at him. 2 weeks. At minimum. I work construction. Then you need to tell your employer you're medically restricted. Daniel laughed once, without humor. You think a construction company pays people to stand around? The doctor's expression softened. If you return too soon, you could turn a temporary injury into permanent damage. Daniel put on the old gray sweatshirt the hospital had given him. What if I don't have the luxury of waiting? Your body doesn't care what you can afford. That sentence stayed with Daniel as he walked into the waiting area. The room was crowded with families, tired nurses, vending machines, and the low murmur of fear. Daniel found a chair near the window and tried to call his daughter. No answer. He checked the time. She would still be in school. He left a message. Hey, Sophia. It's Dad. There was a small accident at work, but I'm okay. I'm at St. Matthew's Hospital. Don't worry when you hear about it. Call me when you get this. He ended the call and looked down at his hands. They were rough from 20 years of labor. Scars crossed his palms and knuckles. Dust remained beneath his fingernails. On his right wrist was a faded thread bracelet Sophia had made when she was 9. Best Dad, the little plastic beads once spelled. Half the letters had fallen off. A young woman hurried into the waiting area. Her coat was open, and her dark hair was pulled into a loose knot. She looked around frantically before rushing to the reception desk. I'm looking for Ethan Cole, she said. He came in from the construction accident. The receptionist asked for identification. I'm his sister, Maya Cole. Daniel looked up. The name meant nothing to him, but the fear in her voice did. He had heard that sound from families before, in hospitals, at accident scenes, and once from his own daughter. The receptionist asked Maya to wait. She turned away from the desk, pressed both hands to her face, and tried not to cry. Daniel stood. Your brother is alive, he said. Maya lowered her hands. You know him? I was there. Were you one of the workers? Daniel nodded. What happened? The scaffold broke. He fell onto some insulation and slid toward the edge. He hurt his leg and hit his head, but the paramedics said his pulse was strong. Maya searched his face. You saw him fall? Yes. And then? Daniel hesitated. A nurse passing nearby slowed and looked at him. He caught your brother, she said. One of the paramedics told us. He held him over the edge until the other workers could pull them both back. Maya stared at Daniel. You saved Ethan? Daniel shifted uncomfortably. The crew helped. But you caught him. It happened fast. Maya stepped forward and hugged him. Daniel stiffened. He was not used to strangers touching him. After a moment, he raised his good arm and awkwardly patted her back. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you so much. He's not out of danger yet. But he's here. Because of you. When she stepped away, tears shone on her face. What's your name? Daniel Reyes. I'm Maya. I heard. She gave a weak smile. A doctor appeared in the doorway. Family of Ethan Cole? Maya turned immediately. I'm his sister. The doctor led her toward a private consultation room. Daniel sat again, feeling suddenly exhausted. He wanted to leave. He wanted to go home, take painkillers, and pretend the day had been ordinary. But Ethan's phone had been found inside the ambulance, and before the paramedics took it away, Daniel had seen more than 30 missed calls from a contact labeled Father. Something told him the day was not finished. An hour passed. Sophia called. "Dad, what happened?" Her voice was sharp with fear. "I told you I'm okay. You said there was a small accident. The news says part of the building collapsed. Part of the scaffolding collapsed. They showed an ambulance. That was the ambulance I rode in." "You were in the ambulance?" "For my shoulder. It's strained. Strained. The doctor says I need rest." Sophia went silent. Daniel knew what she was thinking. She was 17 and far too aware of every unpaid bill. "How long?" she asked. "Maybe a few days." "What did the doctor say?" "Sophia, how long?" Daniel sighed. 2 weeks. We can't afford that." "I know. The rent is due in 12 days. "I know. And my tuition deposit." "I said I know." The words came out, harsher than he intended. Sophia stopped speaking. Daniel closed his eyes. "I'm sorry," he said. "We'll figure it out." "That's what you always say." "And I always do. Mom used to say that too." The mention of Elena struck him harder than the fall. "Sophia, I'm sorry." Daniel looked through the hospital window at the gray sky. "I'll be home soon. Do you need me to come?" "No. Go to Mrs. Alvarez's apartment after school. I'll call you." "Okay. I love you." "I love you too." After the call ended, Daniel remained still. Elena had been gone for 6 years. Cancer had taken her slowly, draining their savings before taking her life. Daniel had sold his truck, borrowed money, worked double shifts, and missed more of Sophia's childhood than he could forgive himself for. He had promised Elena that Sophia would go to college. Sophia had recently been accepted into a summer engineering program at Northwestern University. It was the kind of opportunity that could change her future. The deposit was due Friday. Daniel had hidden the final notice beneath a pile of work gloves in his bedroom. Across the waiting room, the elevator doors opened. 3 men in dark suits stepped out first. They scanned the room with alert, practiced eyes. Behind them came a tall man in a black overcoat. His hair was silver at the temples, and his face carried the polished seriousness of someone accustomed to being obeyed. The waiting room changed when he entered. People recognized him. A man near the vending machine whispered to his wife. A nurse looked up sharply. Someone lifted a phone and began recording until one of the suited men stepped into the camera's line. Daniel recognized him too. Charles Cole, the billionaire founder and chief executive of Cole Meridian Group, one of the largest infrastructure and real estate companies in the country. The company whose name was printed on every banner around Daniel's construction site. The company whose project managers had cut deadlines so aggressively that workers had complained for months about safety inspections being rushed. Charles Cole walked directly to the reception desk. "My son was brought here," he said. The receptionist stood. "Mr. Cole, the medical team is expecting you." "My daughter. She's with the surgeon." Charles's expression did not change, but one hand tightened around the edge of the counter. A hospital administrator appeared and led him down the hall. As Charles passed, Daniel noticed something that did not fit the billionaire's public image. He looked afraid. Not concerned. Not angry. Afraid. 20 minutes later, Maya returned to the waiting area with her father. Charles Cole's gaze found Daniel immediately. Maya had clearly told him what happened. For a moment, the billionaire simply looked at the construction worker sitting beneath the fluorescent lights in a borrowed sweatshirt. Then he walked toward him. "Mr. Reyes?" Daniel stood. "Yes." Charles extended his hand. "I'm Charles Cole." "I know." Their hands met. Charles's grip was firm, but cold. "My daughter told me you saved my son's life." Daniel glanced at Maya. "I caught him. Other men helped pull him up. If you had not caught him, there would have been no one to pull up." Daniel said nothing. Charles studied Daniel's bandaged shoulder. "You were injured." "Not seriously. I understand you held Ethan over the side of the building. For less than a minute. Sometimes a minute is the difference between everything and nothing." Charles's voice broke slightly on the last word. He looked away and gathered himself. "How is your son?" Daniel asked. "The doctors say he has a broken femur, 3 fractured ribs, a concussion, and internal bleeding. They're operating now." "I'm sorry." Charles looked back at him. "You are sorry? He's your son. He would be dead without you." Charles reached inside his coat and removed a card. "This has my private number. Anything you need, medical expenses, time away from work, compensation, you call me." Daniel looked at the card but did not take it. "I don't want money for saving your son." It isn't payment. It sounds like payment. Charles lowered his hand. What would you call it? Guilt. Maya looked between them. Mr. Reyes, Charles said carefully. I'm trying to express gratitude. Then say thank you. I have. Then we're done. The suited men behind Charles shifted slightly. They were not accustomed to hearing anyone speak to him that way. Charles remained silent for several seconds. You work on the Meridian Tower site, he said. Yes. I own that project. I know that too. Then you know I have the ability to make sure you are not punished financially for your injury. Daniel felt anger rise beneath his exhaustion. Punished financially? That was not the right phrase. No, it was exactly the right phrase. That's what happens to workers when they get hurt. We're punished for it. Charles's expression hardened. This is not the place. You came to me. Maya touched her father's arm. Dad, but Daniel continued. We reported problems with that scaffold 3 times. Loose brackets. Damaged locking pins. Missing inspection tags. The supervisor told us the schedule could not slip. Charles frowned. I was told the collapse was caused by a delivery crane striking the upper frame. That crane never touched it. You are certain? I was standing 30 feet away. Charles turned toward one of the men behind him. Call the site director. Daniel laughed bitterly. You think he'll tell you the truth? Charles faced him again. Are you accusing my employees of hiding safety violations? I'm telling you that when people at the top demand impossible deadlines, people at the bottom are the ones standing under the steel. The words hung between them. Several people in the waiting room had begun listening. Charles's face became unreadable. My son was visiting that site because he oversees community development for the project, he said. Do you believe I would knowingly allow him to enter an unsafe structure? No. I believe you didn't know it was unsafe. And that makes me responsible? It makes you powerful. You decide whether that means responsible. Maya looked at Daniel with surprise, then at her father. Charles slipped the card back into his pocket. My son is in surgery. Yes. So I will not argue with you here. Good. But when he is stable, you and I will speak again. Daniel picked up the discharge papers beside his chair. I've said what I needed to say. He turned to leave. Mr. Reyes, Maya called. Daniel stopped. She walked toward him. Please don't go yet. I need to get home. Ethan asked about you before they took him into surgery. Daniel looked back. He was conscious? For a few minutes. He wanted to know if you were all right. Daniel's anger softened. I'm all right. He also said something else. What? Maya glanced at her father before answering. He said you made him keep looking at you. He said that's the only reason he didn't panic. Daniel remembered Ethan's blood-slick fingers scraping the concrete. He was already panicking. He said your voice made him believe he would live. Daniel looked down. Maya touched his arm gently. Please stay until we know he's out of surgery. Daniel wanted to say no. Instead, he returned to the chair. Charles sat across the room. For the next 2 hours, neither man spoke. They waited beneath the same fluorescent lights, separated by 15 feet and lives that could not have been more different. Daniel thought about the rent, his shoulder, and Sophia. Charles stared at the operating room doors. Near midnight, the surgeon appeared. The internal bleeding had been stopped. Ethan's leg had been repaired with a metal rod. He was stable, but he would remain in intensive care overnight. Maya cried with relief. Charles closed his eyes and released a breath that seemed to have been trapped in him for hours. Then he crossed the room to Daniel. My son is alive, he said. Daniel nodded. I'm glad. Charles looked toward the surgical unit. You were right. About what? The scaffold. Daniel waited. Charles removed his phone from his pocket. My site director sent an initial report claiming the crane struck the structure. I had our legal team retrieve the camera recordings before anyone could alter them. The crane never came near it. Daniel felt no satisfaction. Did you check the inspection records? Yes. The scaffold failed 2 inspections. The reports were rewritten. By who? The safety manager, under pressure from the project director. And the project director? Says he was under pressure from the regional vice president. Daniel gave a humorless smile. And the vice president was under pressure from someone above him. Charles met his gaze. Yes. Now you understand. I understand that several people will be terminated. That's not enough. Charles's eyes narrowed. 3 people falsified safety records. They will be terminated and reported to the authorities. And then you'll hire 3 more people and give them the same deadlines. What do you suggest? Change the deadline. You think a project of this scale can simply stop? I think it did stop. Today. Charles looked away. Daniel continued. A worker named Luis Mendoza broke 2 ribs in the collapse. Another man, Andre, has a crushed hand. That hand feeds 3 children. Your son is in the best hospital in the city. What hospital do you think Andre is in? Charles did not answer. Do you know his last name? Daniel asked. No, that's the problem. Maya stood nearby, listening. Charles looked older than he had when he entered the hospital. What do you want from me, Mr. Reyes? Daniel's voice lowered. I want you to go to the other hospital. What? Go see Andre. Go see Luis. Look at their families. Tell them why a deadline mattered more than their bodies. Charles stared at him. You're asking me to leave my son. Your son is stable. Their families matter too. Maya stepped forward. He's right, Dad. Charles turned to her. Ethan would say the same thing. For a long moment, Charles said nothing. Then he spoke to one of his assistants. Find out where the other workers were taken. Daniel picked up his papers again. This time, Charles did not stop him. When Daniel reached the hospital entrance, rain had begun to fall. He stood beneath the awning, wondering how he would get home. His wallet contained $11. A taxi would cost 3 times that. A black sedan pulled to the curb. One of Charles Cole's assistants stepped out. Mr. Reyes, I've been instructed to take you home. Daniel almost refused. Then his shoulder throbbed. He climbed into the car. The sedan stopped 40 minutes later outside Daniel's apartment building in Pilsen. The brick structure leaned slightly toward the street, and one of the lights above the entrance had burned out months ago. Sophia was waiting on the front steps. She ran too. The car as Daniel stepped out. You said you were okay. I am. She saw the bandage beneath his sweatshirt. You're hurt. It looks worse than it is. She hugged him carefully. The assistant placed a hand on the rear door. Mr. Reyes, Mr. Cole asked me to give you this. He held out an envelope. Daniel did not take it. What is it? I don't know. Then take it back. Sir, take it back. The assistant hesitated, then returned to the car. Sophia watched the sedan drive away. Was that Charles Cole's car? Yes. Why was Charles Cole's car bringing you home? Daniel began walking toward the building. I saved his son. Sophia remained on the sidewalk. You did what? Inside the apartment. Daniel explained the accident while Sophia cleaned the dried blood near his hairline. Her hands shook as he described Ethan going over the edge. You could have fallen too, she said. I didn't. You always say things like that as if the ending makes everything okay. The ending matters. What about everything before it? Daniel looked at her. Sophia had Elena's eyes. Dark, direct, impossible to deceive. You should have taken the envelope, she said. No, why? Because saving someone isn't a business transaction. Rent is. Daniel leaned back in the kitchen chair. Sophia, we're 2 months behind on the electric bill. The refrigerator barely works. You haven't paid the college program deposit. I will. How? I'll borrow from Marcus. You already owe Marcus money. I'll find another job until my shoulder heals. What job can you do with one arm? Daniel's temper rose. I'll handle it. That's not an answer. I'm your father. You don't need to worry about this. I'm 17, not 7. I hear the landlord when he knocks. I see you counting money at the kitchen table. I know you skip dinner when there isn't enough food. I'm not taking money because I saved a rich man's son. Why not? Because there are things you don't sell. Sophia put down the cloth. Maybe pride should be one of them. She walked to her room and closed the door. Daniel sat alone at the kitchen table. Rain tapped the window. Pipes rattled in the wall. On the refrigerator, beneath magnets and overdue notices, was a photograph of Elena standing beside Daniel at Navy Pier. Sophia, 5 years old, sat on Daniel's shoulders. All 3 of them were laughing. Daniel touched the picture. Tell me what to do, he whispered. The photograph gave him no answer. The next morning, Daniel woke to the sound of someone knocking. His shoulder had swollen overnight. Every movement sent pain through his chest. He opened the door. Charles Cole stood in the hallway. He wore no overcoat, no tie, and no expression of authority. Behind him stood no security team. He carried 2 cups of coffee in a cardboard tray. Daniel stared at him. How did you find my address? I own the company that employs you. That doesn't make it less disturbing. Charles lifted the coffee slightly. May I come in? No. Charles nodded as if he had expected that. Then we can speak here. Daniel stepped into the hallway and closed the door behind him. How is Ethan? Awake. In pain, but awake. That's good. He asked for you. Daniel folded his arms, then winced. Charles noticed. Your injury is worse. It'll heal. I went to see Andre and Luis. Daniel's expression changed. Last night. Yes. How are they? Luis has 2 fractured ribs and a punctured lung. Andre's surgeons saved his hand, but they do not know how much movement he will regain. Daniel looked down. His wife was there. Charles continued. Their youngest daughter was asleep across 2 chairs. You stayed? For 3 hours. Daniel said nothing. I spoke with every worker injured in the collapse, Charles said. The company will cover their medical care, lost wages, rehabilitation, and family expenses. That's what workers' compensation is supposed to do. This will go beyond legal requirements. And after the headlines disappear, we are suspending construction across 6 active sites, pending independent safety reviews. Daniel looked at him sharply. That will cost you millions. More. Your board agreed to that. I did not ask. A small silence passed between them. Charles offered one of the coffees. Daniel took it. Why are you here? Daniel asked. To thank you again. You could have called. You refused my card. That should have told you something. It did. Charles looked toward the stairwell. When my son was 9, he nearly drowned. Daniel waited. We were at a private resort in Hawaii. He swam beyond the marked area. A current pulled him away from shore. I was on a conference call. Charles's voice remained controlled, but his eyes changed. A lifeguard reached him. Ethan survived. I fired the resort manager for inadequate barriers, donated equipment to the beach patrol, and increased security around my family. You tried to solve fear with money. Yes. Did it work? No. Charles looked at Daniel again. Yesterday, I saw you in that waiting room, and my first instinct was to give you money because money is the instrument I know how to use. You saw it as guilt. Was I wrong? No. Daniel took a sip of coffee. Charles continued. I have spent my life believing that results excuse the pressure required to achieve them. Buildings open. Investors profit. Cities grow. Employees are paid. I convinced myself that the system was successful because I stood far enough away from the people it was hurting. And now my son has a metal rod in his leg because a safety report was changed to protect my schedule. Daniel studied him. You came here to confess? I came here because Ethan wants to see you. And because I want you to tell me what else I do not see. Daniel almost laughed. You think one construction worker can explain your entire company? I think one construction worker told me more truth in 10 minutes than my executives have told me in 10 years. The apartment door opened. Sophia stood behind Daniel, wearing a school sweatshirt and holding her backpack. She looked at Charles. You're the billionaire. Charles smiled faintly. I've been called worse. Are you here to give my dad money? Daniel closed his eyes. Sophia. What? He should. Charles looked from her to Daniel. I offered. Your father refused. He does that. Sophia, go to school. She ignored him. Did my dad tell you he can't work for 2 weeks? No. Did he tell you we might lose this apartment? Daniel's face tightened. That's enough. Did he tell you I got accepted into Northwestern's engineering program but can't pay the deposit? Sophia. She looked at him, tears filling her eyes. You saved someone else's future, Dad. Why won't you let anyone help save ours? She pushed past Charles and hurried down the stairs. Daniel stood motionless. Charles did not speak until her footsteps disappeared. Your daughter is going to be an engineer? She wants to be. The summer program is competitive. She earned her place. And the deposit? Is my responsibility. Charles nodded. I understand. No, you don't. You're right. I don't. Charles placed his untouched coffee on the windowsill. But I know the difference between charity and obligation. There is no obligation. My son is alive because you were willing to risk your life. My company created the conditions that injured you. Those are 2 separate debts. I don't want to be in debt to you. You wouldn't be. That's easy for rich people to say. Charles considered this. Then do not accept anything for yourself. Daniel frowned. What does that mean? Come to the hospital. Speak to Ethan. After that, I will make you an offer. Not a gift. A job. I have a job. A different one. I'm a construction worker. That is exactly why I need you. 2 hours later, Daniel stood outside Ethan's hospital room. He had agreed to come only because Ethan asked. Inside, sunlight spilled across white sheets and medical equipment. Ethan's leg was suspended slightly, wrapped in bandages. Purple bruises spread across his face and neck. When he saw Daniel, he smiled. My favorite person. You don't know me well enough to say that. You're the reason I'm not a stain on Wabash Avenue. Daniel pulled a chair closer to the bed. How do you feel? Like I lost a fight with a building. You did. Ethan laughed, then winced and pressed a hand to his ribs. Charles stood near the window. Maya sat on the opposite side of the bed. Ethan looked at Daniel's shoulder. You got hurt because of me. I got hurt because the scaffold failed. My father says you warned him about the safety reports. I told him what happened. Ethan looked toward Charles. Dad says he shut down 6 sites. For review. Charles said, meaning everyone is furious with him. They will survive. Ethan turned back to Daniel. My family has a foundation. Daniel groaned softly. Not this again. Listen first. We fund workforce training, housing programs, and technical education. At least, that's what the brochures say. Charles frowned. Ethan, what? We both know half the foundation's work is designed for tax advantages and publicity. Maya tried to hide a smile. Ethan continued. We need someone who understands what workers actually face. Not someone with an MBA who has never lifted anything heavier than a laptop. You think I should run a foundation? No. I think you should advise the company's Safety and Worker Protection Council. Daniel looked at Charles. We don't have a Worker Protection Council. We will, Charles said. So you invented a job overnight. I identified a missing function. You mean Ethan identified it? That too. Daniel stood. You people are unbelievable. Sit down, Ethan said. I came because you asked to see me. And I'm asking you to listen. Daniel remained standing. Ethan's expression became serious. You think I don't know what it means to be saved by someone whose name my company did not know? It's your father's company. It will be mine one day. The room grew quiet. And that terrifies me, Ethan continued. Because yesterday I learned that I can walk through a project with executives, hear a perfect safety briefing, and still almost die because the truth never reaches the top. That's not new. It's new to me. Exactly. Ethan nodded. Then help me change it. Daniel looked at him. What would this council do? Charles answered. Independent site inspections. Anonymous reporting channels controlled by workers, not management. Automatic work stoppages for unresolved violations. Wage protection during safety shutdowns. Medical and rehabilitation guarantees beyond legal minimums. And who has final authority? The council would. Who chooses the council? Half elected by workers. Half appointed by the company. Then the company controls half. Equal representation. Workers take the risk. They should have the majority. Charles's jaw tightened. Daniel, Maya said quietly, he's negotiating with you. Daniel looked at Charles. The billionaire gave the smallest nod. 60% worker-elected representatives, Charles said. 40% company appointees. 70-30. 65-35. Workers choose the chair. Agreed. Any worker can stop a dangerous operation without losing pay. Subject to review. Immediate stop first. Review afterward. Charles hesitated. Ethan smiled from the bed. Dad, he's better at this than half your board. Charles ignored him. Agreed, he said. Daniel sat slowly. And what is my job? Director of Field Safety Advocacy, Charles said. You would report directly to the council, not project management. I don't have a college degree. You have 20 years of experience. I don't wear suits. I consider that an advantage. And the pay? Charles named a figure. Daniel stared at him. It was more than 3 times his construction salary. No, Daniel said. Charles looked surprised. No. Pay me what the other directors make. That is what the other directors make. Daniel looked at Ethan, then Maya. Neither seemed to be joking. I need training. You'll receive it. I need to remain part of the workers' union. Agreed. My first priority is the injured men. They will be offered positions or long-term support based on their recovery. And the falsified reports go to the authorities, not buried in some private settlement. Charles's expression became cold again. They were submitted this morning. Daniel leaned back. His shoulder hurt. His chest hurt. His entire life felt as if it had been lifted from one foundation and placed shakily onto another. This doesn't erase what happened, he said. No, Charles replied. It makes what happens next matter. Daniel thought of Sophia's words. You always say things like that, as if the ending makes everything okay. Maybe endings did not make everything okay. Maybe endings were only places where people decided what they would do with the damage. I'll do it for 6 months, Daniel said. Temporary trial. 1 year, Charles replied. 6 months. 9. 6, with the option to extend. Charles held out his hand. Daniel took it. Agreed. 3 days later, the story reached the national news. Security footage from the accident had leaked online. The video showed Daniel sprinting across the floor, diving toward the edge, and catching Ethan by the wrist. It showed his body sliding across the concrete. It showed 3 workers pulling them back from open air. Millions of people watched it. Reporters gathered outside Daniel's apartment. News programs called him a hero. Social media users praised his courage. Strangers started online fundraising campaigns. Daniel refused interviews. He also asked that the fundraising pages be closed. The public interpreted this as humility. The truth was more complicated. Daniel did not feel heroic. He still woke at night, hearing twisting steel. In his dreams, he missed Ethan's wrist. Sometimes Ethan fell. Sometimes Daniel fell with him. Sophia noticed. One night, she found him sitting in the dark kitchen. "You should talk to someone," she said. "I'm talking to you. A professional." "I'm fine." "You're always fine." Daniel looked at her. She sat across from him. "Mr. Cole paid the Northwestern deposit," she said. Daniel's expression changed. "What?" "The program emailed me. They said I received a new scholarship from the Cole Meridian Foundation. I told him not to. It isn't just for me." Daniel stopped. "They created 20 scholarships," Sophia said, "for children of construction workers. Full tuition for the summer program." Daniel stared at her. "He listened to you," she continued. "You said not to do anything only for us." "I didn't tell him to create scholarships." "No, you just made him see people." Daniel looked toward Elena's photograph on the refrigerator. "Are you going to accept it?" he asked. "Yes." He nodded slowly. "Good." Sophia reached across the table and took his hand. "I'm proud of you." "For catching Ethan?" "For letting it become bigger than that." The Worker Protection Council held its first meeting 2 weeks later. Daniel entered a conference room on the 48th floor of Cole Meridian headquarters wearing new work boots, a clean button-down shirt, and no tie. The room overlooked the city. Around the table sat executives, lawyers, safety specialists, union representatives, equipment operators, electricians, carpenters, and laborers. Some of the executives appeared skeptical. The workers appeared even more skeptical. Charles sat at one end of the table. Ethan joined through a video call from the hospital. Daniel stood at the front. He had prepared notes, but he did not use them. "My name is Daniel Reyes," he began. "I've worked construction since I was 19. I've built schools my daughter attended, offices I was never invited into, and luxury apartments I could never afford." Several workers nodded. "I've seen companies put safety slogans on walls while punishing crews for working too slowly. I've watched injured people return before they healed because missing a paycheck meant missing rent. I've watched reports disappear, warnings get ignored, and deadlines become more important than the people expected to meet them." An executive shifted in his chair. Daniel continued. 2 weeks ago, Ethan Cole almost fell from the 32nd floor of Meridian Tower. People call me a hero because I caught him. But the truth is, nobody should have needed to catch him. The room became completely still. "This council is not here to celebrate a rescue. We are here to prevent the next fall." He placed a damaged scaffold locking pin on the table. It had been recovered from the accident site. "This piece of metal costs $43, Daniel said. "Someone decided replacing it could wait. That decision caused millions of dollars in damage, injured 6 people, and nearly killed the owner's son." He looked around the table. "Safety is not expensive. Neglect is expensive." Charles watched him without speaking. Daniel pushed the locking pin into the center of the table. "From today forward, every worker on every site controlled by this company has the authority to report a danger without retaliation. Every unresolved high-risk complaint stops work. Every safety report is visible to elected worker representatives. Nobody loses wages because management failed to provide safe conditions." One of the regional executives raised his hand. "This policy could lead to abuse. Workers may stop operations over minor concerns or labor disputes." Daniel turned toward him. "What was your name?" "Richard Hale." "How many years have you worked on an active construction floor, Richard?" "I oversee 12 active sites." "That wasn't my question." Richard's face reddened. "0. Then when a worker tells you a condition is dangerous, your first job is to listen. We still need objective standards." "Of course. But objective standards mean nothing if the people applying them are rewarded for ignoring danger." Richard looked toward Charles. Charles spoke calmly. "Mr. Reyes has the floor." For the first time in his working life, Daniel stood in a room where someone powerful had chosen not merely to hear him, but to protect his right to speak. The council approved the policy after 4 hours of debate. Within a month, workers had submitted 312 safety reports. Executives complained that the number was evidence the new system encouraged unnecessary reporting. Daniel argued that the reports were evidence of how many problems had previously gone unspoken. Independent inspectors confirmed serious hazards at 9 sites. 3 cranes were removed from operation. Electrical systems were repaired. Damaged harnesses were replaced. Unsafe subcontractors lost their contracts. 2 supervisors were fired for retaliation. Production slowed. Then injuries declined. After 6 months, recordable accidents across coal meridian construction sites had fallen by 38%. The financial department discovered that reduced medical costs, legal claims, insurance increases, and equipment damage nearly balanced the cost of the new safety measures. By the end of the year, the company saved money. Charles presented the numbers to the board. Daniel presented photographs of workers who had gone home safely. His numbers show the program works, Daniel told them. My pictures show why it matters. Ethan spent 4 months recovering. He learned to walk again with crutches, then a cane. The first time he returned to Meridian Tower, Daniel met him at the entrance. Construction had resumed under the new safety system. Workers gathered as Ethan stepped carefully onto the floor. Marcus Lee approached him. "Try not to fall off anything today," Marcus said. Ethan laughed. "I'll do my best." They walked to the section where the accident had occurred. The open edge was now protected by reinforced barriers. Inspection tags hung from every scaffold connection. A digital screen displayed unresolved safety concerns and the names of the teams responsible for fixing them. Ethan stood silently. "This is where you caught me?" he asked. Daniel pointed to a mark on the concrete. "Right there." Ethan moved closer, though not too close. He looked down at the city. "I don't remember falling," he said. "I remember hitting the insulation. I remember sliding. Then I remember your hand." Daniel flexed his right shoulder. "It still ached in cold weather. I remember thinking you were heavier than you looked." Ethan smiled. Then his expression became serious. "Why did you run toward me?" Daniel looked at the street below. "I don't know." "That's not true." Daniel thought for a moment. "My wife used to say that who you are is decided before the emergency happens." "What does that mean?" "It means when there's no time to think, you become whatever your choices have been building inside you." Ethan considered this. "So you had been preparing to save me your whole life?" "No. I had been trying not to become the kind of man who watched someone fall." They stood together in silence. A year after the accident, Meridian Tower opened. The original plan called for a private ceremony with investors, city officials, and media representatives. Daniel insisted that the workers and their families be invited. More than 2,000 people gathered in the completed atrium. Steel beams rose above them. Sunlight poured through the glass exterior. On one wall, instead of a list of executives and donors, a large installation displayed the names of every worker who had helped construct the building. Andre stood beside it, moving the fingers of his repaired hand. He had regained 60% of its function and now worked as an equipment safety trainer. Luis had recovered fully and had been elected to chair the Worker Protection Council. Sophia stood near the stage wearing a Northwestern University jacket. The summer program had led to a full scholarship offer after graduation. Maya worked beside her, helping coordinate guests. Ethan walked without a cane, though a slight limp remained. Charles stepped to the microphone. A giant screen behind him displayed the tower's completion statistics: height, materials, investment, jobs created, projected economic impact. Charles looked at the screen. Then he turned it off. "I have spent most of my career measuring success in numbers," he said. "Revenue, growth, square footage, deadlines, market value." The atrium quieted. "1 year ago, my son nearly died in this building before it had walls. He survived because Daniel Reyes, a man I had never met, risked his own life to save him." Applause rose through the atrium. Daniel looked down, uncomfortable. Charles raised a hand, and the crowd quieted again. "For several days, I believe the most important story was that a construction worker saved a billionaire's son. I was wrong." Daniel looked up. "The important story is that the construction worker had warned us the building was unsafe." He and others spoke. "We failed to listen." The room became still. That failure was not caused by one broken part or one dishonest manager. It was caused by a culture that rewarded silence, speed, and distance from consequences. "Daniel did more than save my son. He forced this company to see the people whose labor creates everything we claim as our achievement. Charles turned toward Daniel. Please join me. Daniel walked onto the stage. Charles held out a small object. It was the damaged scaffold pin Daniel had placed on the council table months earlier. It had been mounted inside a clear glass case. A metal plate beneath it read, "The cost of not listening." "This will remain in the main boardroom of Cole Meridian Group," Charles said, "not as a symbol of our success, but as a warning against forgetting." He handed the case to Daniel. Daniel examined it. Then he returned it. "It belongs to the company," he said. "I don't need it." Charles smiled. "What do you need?" Daniel looked at the workers and their families gathered below. "I need you to keep listening after people stop watching." Charles nodded. "I will." Daniel looked directly at him. That wasn't a request. Laughter moved through the crowd. Even Charles laughed. After the ceremony, Daniel walked outside with Sophia. The tower rose above them, reflecting the evening sky. "You built that," Sophia said. "Me and a few thousand other people. You changed it too." Daniel shook his head. "People changed it together." Sophia slipped her arm through his. "You know, Mom would have loved this. She would have complained that I wasn't wearing a tie. She would have bought you one herself. And I would have hidden it." They laughed. Across the plaza, Ethan stood with Charles and Maya. Ethan caught Daniel's eye and raised a hand. Daniel waved back. Reporters still occasionally asked him about the rescue. They wanted to know what it felt like to hold the son of one of the richest men in America over a 30-story drop. Daniel always gave them the same answer. He felt like anyone else. Some reporters were disappointed by that response. They wanted something dramatic. They wanted a statement about wealth, fate, courage, or destiny. But Daniel meant exactly what he said. At the edge of the building, Ethan had not felt rich. He had not felt powerful. He had not felt different from Andre, Luis, Marcus, Daniel, or any other person whose life depended on the strength of someone else's hands. He had simply felt human. And perhaps that was what Charles Cole finally understood when he walked into the hospital and found his son's life tied to a worker he had never noticed. Power could build towers, purchase companies, influence governments, and place a man's name across the skyline. But it could not make one life weigh more than another. Years later, when Sophia graduated with a degree in structural engineering, she accepted a position at a firm specializing in public infrastructure and construction safety. Daniel sat in the front row during the ceremony, wearing a suit Ethan had given him and a tie Sophia had chosen. Charles, Maya, and Ethan sat nearby. By then, the worker protection system Daniel helped create had been adopted by several other construction companies. Injury rates had fallen across thousands of job sites. Anonymous worker reports had prevented crane failures, electrical fires, collapses, and countless smaller accidents that would never make the news. Daniel never became comfortable with the attention. He did become comfortable walking into boardrooms. He learned how to read budgets, challenge executives, negotiate policies, and recognize when someone was using complicated language to hide a simple truth. Whenever discussions became too abstract, he brought them back to the people on the ground. "What does this decision mean for the workers standing beneath it?" he would ask. That question changed meetings. It changed schedules. It changed buildings. Sometimes it changed lives. After Sophia's graduation ceremony, Daniel stood outside the university hall while families took photographs. Sophia approached him in her cap and gown. "I have something for you." She handed him a small box. Inside was a new bracelet made from woven black thread and silver beads. The beads spelled, "Best Dad." Daniel smiled. "You know I still have the old one. It's missing half the letters. It has character. It looks like it survived a building collapse." "So do I." She tied the new bracelet around his wrist, just above the scars on his hand. Ethan joined them, walking with only the faintest trace of his old injury. "Ready for dinner?" he asked. "Your father coming?" Daniel said. "He's finishing a call." Daniel raised an eyebrow. Ethan laughed. "I know. Some things change slowly." Across the courtyard, Charles ended the call and hurried toward them. "I'm here," he said. "You're late," Daniel replied. "By 45 seconds. A deadline is a deadline." Charles shook his head. Years earlier, the words might have sounded like an accusation. Now they sounded like a reminder between two men who had met on opposite sides of a hospital waiting room and discovered that gratitude was not enough, guilt was not enough, and even saving a life was not enough if nothing changed afterward. They walked together toward the restaurant. Behind them, the university bells began to ring. Daniel looked at the people beside him, his daughter stepping into her future, the young man whose wrist he had once held above open air, the billionaire who had finally learned to look down from the top of his company and see the human beings holding it up. The world had called Daniel a hero for one decision made in less than a second. Run, reach, hold on. But the decision that mattered most had come later. It was the decision not to let the rescue become a story people admired and then forgot. It was the decision to turn one saved life into safer lives for thousands of others. Daniel glanced at the bracelet on his wrist. The silver letters caught the sunlight. For years, he had believed his job was to build things strong enough to stand. Now he understood that buildings were not the only things people constructed. They built systems. They built trust. They built futures. They built the kind of world where a worker's warning could travel all the way to the boardroom before someone had to fall. And sometimes, when the structure had already begun to break, one person reached across the distance, caught another human being by the wrist, and refused to let go.